Well, the unfortunate thing with Rage is that while we had originally hoped that we might be able to do something in less time than it took us to do Doom 3, it turns out that here we are. It's going to be a 4-year development project again. We're doing obviously a lot more with each generation. We've got a lot more horsepower, a lot more everything, so we're taking advantage of it. And at this point, we are pretty much closing down about like we did with Doom 3, where the technology all gets pretty much cooked and ready to go, and the last sort of year of development, year plus, winds up being where the designers really get to show their stuff and shine. The artists have kind of hit their groove. They've got the style going. They've got the production process down. They're building things that are Rage style really well. And now it's kind of coming into the time where the designers get to really take all the work that they've been doing for the last few years and turn it into a fabulous game. So the cross-platform development is still, it's working out well. It's not, it's not quite as seamless and magical as as it kind of looks when we're in demo mode on there, and that often the PS3 version is a week or two out of sync with the 360 stuff, depending on how things have been checked out, and the Mac port still needs to be kind of manually updated. But it is pretty much to the point where we submit builds and we do get a checklist back in the morning where it said, okay, built on the PC, the 360, the PS3, the Mac. Occasionally we have weeks where some of those wind up not being checked because something's under development there. But for the most part, that's working pretty well, and the data does pretty much just run across all the different platforms there. When we get down to final crunching distribution, we are going to have to make different builds of the media for the different data sizes, because it does turn out that's the one and only thing that the PS3 is better for our game than the 360 is the Blu-ray disc is going to be nice for us. We are going to be able to have a higher quality distribution with less compression artifacts on it with the extra space there. The one thing that did take us a little bit by surprise is we had been, from early on, we knew that these images, these giant mega textures, were in the hundreds of gigs for the entire game, and probably a terabyte of data. But I had been doing this sort of hand-waving thing saying, most of it never gets seen. We're really going to get 75% compression just because these things can't be seen. Because what we had done is we had collected data of people running around the game and finding out that, in general, they only looked at a tiny fraction of the data that was actually there. But when we made an automated tool that went to every place that a player could possibly be and looked in every direction and grabbed all of that, they were seeing a lot more than we actually thought they were, and it was not a 75% compression ratio on that. So we had a little bit of a wake-up call with that, and we had to go in and start doing a little bit more than we had originally planned on in terms of laying things out for better compression, doing some different things that save bits and pieces here. And we are nickel and diming all of that back down. And in the end, we probably will wind up biasing things based on what people actually see. We'll take this automated thing and say this is everything that they can see, but then we'll have 100 beta testers go through it all, see what they actually do look at. And when we have to make the cut and say we need to get 1 gig more out of this to fit on the 360, then we're going to go and say, well, these are the 1 billion bytes that are least looked at by anyone that ever played the game, and those go away, and those just fall back to whatever compression ratio you have below that. For the most part with Rage, I have been pretty hands-off on the design side of things, only on the really kind of tactical issues about what does a weapon feel like, how is the car going to be presented, some of those things where I put my input in. The story arc side of things, where we're trying to do a real tightly designed progression through the game on there, I have almost no involvement with. I mean, we have a bunch of other people in the company now that can care deeply about that side of things and that can spend the time to do a really good job at it. I'm very hesitant to, in my position as founder and president and all this, I'm kind of like a live grenade that can be thrown into some of these design discussions, and I don't want to be ignoring the process most of the time, pop in and say, oh, it should be like this, and throw everything into a disarray on that. So I try to let the designers do their design work, and I stay and do my engineering work. So the choice of frame rate is a really important one, where historically id games have been, for the most part, designed to be on the PC, just barely runnable with most people's hardware, and then as new hardware comes out, the state-of-the-art stuff works their way up to something that runs at 60 frames per second or something. And that's worked out well for us historically as we went through the original Wolfenstein, Doom, Quake, all the way up through. The one exception that we made was with Quake Arena, where we tried to actually make that be a faster game early on. But with Doom 3, we were back down to it being, most people played it at 20 hertz or something, and people with the really high-end systems were 30-something. And only really after the game shipped and had been there for a while did you get systems that could wind up playing that at full resolution, full speed. Now, I've done tests like this several times over the years where we take some game action and run the game simplify things down enough that we can make comparisons, run it at 60 hertz, 30 hertz, and even go above that and say 120 hertz with motion blur, 240 hertz, and see where the breaks and trade-offs are. And for a driving game, there's a significant difference between 30 hertz and 60 hertz. For first-person shooters, on the PC with a mouse, there's a significant difference between 30 and 60. On a console with a gamepad, it's a little bit more of a challenge there, where connoisseurs will always say, oh, we want the silky smooth play of 60 hertz on there, but it is a little bit more of an open question about for just a random user that picks up a game controller and plays the game on there, whether 30 hertz when you've got good anti-aliasing and motion blur and all of this, how that compares to 60. But for a driving game, it really is significant. So this allowed us to make what turns out to be a really nice strategic plan for us, where Rage, we get to push hard, make it a 60 hertz game on here, which involves lots of cuts and kind of undershooting what the technology is capable of on there, because you've got fixed overheads and you have to leave a cushion if you want to be at 60, because you don't want to be 60 occasionally dropping to 30, because that's pretty jarring on there. So this allows us to go ahead and build Rage, make the hard cuts, push really hard, make sure it's optimized really well for all of this. And then with Doom, which isn't going to have much featured driving in it, it is going to be more of a traditional run-and-gun first-person shooter there. We'll let that run at 30 frames per second on the consoles, which will let us do essentially 3 times as rich of graphics, because without fixed overheads and kind of padding on there, we can throw a lot more at it, a lot more triangles, and especially a lot more flash, a lot more particles, screen warps, all sorts of other things going on top of it. And it'll look like a completely different graphics engine, even though it's built on the same basics there. And that's the other side benefit is that on the PC, you'll be able to actually get a 60 hertz game. That's one thing that makes us a little sad with Rage is that people with the latest and greatest PC cards, there's not that much more that they can scale up. It's already running at 60 hertz. They can run it at higher resolution. We'll have a few tweaky filter things that they can change on there, but it's not a world of difference to justify buying a $500 video card. But with the Doom project, all the consoles, they'll be 30 hertz, and the high-end PCs will still be able to be 60, which will be pretty cool. So we have sort of a backup plan for the timing of the development of the Doom game, where we're hoping that we're laying all of these positives in that should allow us to have a more disciplined, focused game design. We're not rewriting a lot of systems. It's going to be built on id Tech 5, which will be rock-solid shipping technology to build it on. We're trying to hire designers that want to work within known limits rather than people that want to do brand new blue sky stuff on there. So we're hoping that it's going to be a quicker development cycle, but we're always wrong on our development projections on here. The worst case scenario would be that we're late enough or the consoles are near enough that the next generation transition winds up happening where you're shipping and everybody's waiting for the next console to be coming out for Christmas. So we do have a backup plan for that, and that's I am beginning the early research for what we want to be doing for real next generation rendering technology on there. And we may wind up setting up a situation where if we don't touch any of the other stuff on there, we might wind up with a cross-generational title where we could wind up with it shipping on the current generation consoles and the next generation ones, where the only real difference would be the rendering technology. And there's a few tiny steps that we're making in our media creation that will allow us to hopefully make that step to infinite geometry, like we have infinite texturing on there. And we think that we can make a media set that can kind of straddle those lines. Now, what we would love to do is have the Doom project come out early and fast, and then the next generation consoles come out far enough in advance or far enough after that that we could have another Doom title that's not just the same thing reskinned on there, but something that is new content, new media, designed for the next generation console, hopefully coming off of a big success with the current Doom project. That would be the best of all worlds, so we've got the spectrum of fallbacks and contingencies that take us between the two.